Jake Rodriguez never thought his biggest problem in space would be getting too much sleep. The 24-year-old biology student had dreamed of this moment his entire life. Working on Horizon Station, humanity's first research base among the stars, he packed his bags with excitement, ready to study alien plants and maybe discover something amazing. What he didn't expect was to discover that his new roommate thought he was a stuffed animal. The trouble started the moment Jake walked into his assigned room. The door slid open with a soft whoosh, and he stepped inside expecting to see another human researcher. Instead, he found himself face to face with someone who was definitely not from Earth. She stood nearly 7 feet tall, with skin that glowed, a soft blue color like moonlight on water. Her eyes were huge and golden, like a cat's eyes but much kinder. Long silver hair flowed down her back, and when she moved, tiny sparkles of light seemed to dance around her. "Oh my stars," she said in a voice that sounded like wind chimes. "You're even more adorable than the pictures showed." Jake blinked. Pictures? What pictures? He looked around the room and noticed it had been decorated with what looked like stuffed animals from a dozen different worlds. Fuzzy creatures in every color imaginable sat on shelves and hung from the ceiling. Hi, Jake managed to say. "I think there might be some mistake. I'm supposed to room with another researcher." The tall woman tilted her head, making those sparkles in her hair shimmer. "But you are a researcher, aren't you? I'm Zara, and I study living things too. We're going to be such good friends." She reached out with one long, graceful finger and gently poked his cheek. So soft and squishy, just perfect. Jake felt his face turn red. Perfect for what? He was about to ask when Dr. Lisa Wong, the station's head of personnel, appeared in the doorway. "I see you've met your roommate," Dr. Wong said with an apologetic smile. "I know this is unusual, but we had a last-minute housing shortage. Zara's people, the Veltari, are very peaceful and friendly. I'm sure you two will get along fine. But she's—" Jake gestured helplessly at Zara, who was now examining his hair with obvious fascination. "Different? Yes, that's the whole point of this program," Dr. Wong explained. "Learning to live and work with other species. Don't worry, the Veltari are completely harmless. In fact, they're known throughout the galaxy for being incredibly gentle and caring." As if to prove this point, Zara carefully straightened Jake's collar and patted his shoulder. "There, much better. You humans are so delicate. We must take good care of you." After Dr. Wong left, Jake tried to explain the situation to Zara. He showed her his research credentials, his university degree, and even pulled up his academic papers on his tablet. But every time he proved he was a serious scientist. Zara just nodded and smiled. "Of course you're very smart," she said. The same way someone might praise a clever pet. "The smartest little creature I ever met." Little? Jake was 5'8", which was perfectly average for a human male. But next to Zara, he felt like a child. And the way she kept looking at him with those big golden eyes made him feel like she wanted to put him in her pocket and carry him around. That first day was exhausting. Zara followed him everywhere, making sure he didn't bump into things or hurt himself. When he tried to lift a box of equipment, she gently took it from his hands. When he reached for a high shelf, she got the item for him before he could even ask. It was like having the world's most attentive babysitter. "I can do things myself," Jake protested after she cut his food into small pieces at dinner. "Of course you can, precious thing," Zara agreed, then continued cutting anyway. "But why should you strain yourself when I'm here to help other researchers?" At the station found their relationship amusing. A few humans tried to explain to Jake that this was normal Veltari behavior, but that didn't make it less embarrassing. Here he was, a graduate student with 3 degrees, being treated like someone's beloved toy. The real shock came that night when Jake got ready for bed. He changed into his pajamas and was just pulling back the covers when Zara emerged from the bathroom. She wore what looked like a flowing nightgown that sparkled with the same light as her hair. "Sleep time," she announced cheerfully, climbing into the same bed Jake had been aiming for. "Wait, what are you doing?" Jake squeaked. "This is my bed." Zara looked confused. "It's our bed. We're roommates, aren't we?" My people always sleep together for comfort and safety. Don't worry. I'll keep you warm and safe all night. Before Jake could protest, Zara had gently but firmly pulled him into the bed beside her. Her arms wrapped around him like he was a teddy bear, and she made soft, happy humming sounds. "Perfect," she whispered, nuzzling the top of his head. "You're the perfect size for cuddling." So warm and soft, Jake lay there stiff as a board, his heart pounding. This was definitely not what he'd expected when he signed up for the exchange program. Zara's skin was surprisingly warm, and she smelled like flowers and starlight, if starlight had a smell. Her embrace was gentle but firm, like being hugged by a very affectionate giant. Zara?" he whispered. "Shh," she murmured sleepily. "Sleep now, little one. I'll keep the bad dreams away." Despite his confusion and embarrassment, Jake found himself relaxing. Zara's heartbeat was slow and steady, and her humming was surprisingly soothing. For the first time in months, his usual anxiety about being far from home began to fade. But as he drifted off to sleep, one thought kept nagging at him. What exactly had he gotten himself into? And more importantly, how was he going to survive? 6 months of being treated like the galaxy's most pampered pet? The last thing he remembered before sleep took him was Zara's contented sigh, and her arms tightening around him just a little more. Tomorrow, he decided, he would definitely need to have a serious talk with Dr. Wong about alternative housing arrangements. What Jake didn't know was that this was only the beginning of the most confusing, frustrating, and surprisingly wonderful experience of his life. Jake woke up the next morning feeling more rested than he had in years. For a moment, he couldn't remember where he was. Then he realized he was still wrapped up in Zara's arms like a human-sized teddy bear. And reality came crashing back. "Good morning, sweetness," Zara said, her voice bright and cheerful. She was already awake, watching him with those big golden eyes. "Did you sleep well? You made the most adorable little sounds." Jake's face turned bright red. "I don't make sounds when I sleep." "Oh, but you do," Zara insisted, finally releasing him from her embrace. Little happy sighs and tiny mumbles. So precious. This had to stop. Jake spent his entire breakfast planning how to explain human sleeping customs to Zara. He even drew diagrams on his tablet showing separate beds and personal space bubbles. When he presented his carefully prepared presentation, Zara listened, with the patience of someone humoring a small child. "I understand what you're saying," she said when he finished. "But why would you want to sleep alone? Don't you get lonely? What if you have bad dreams?" "Humans are different," Jake explained. "We need privacy and personal space to feel comfortable." Zara's expression grew worried. "But if you're alone, how will I know if you need help? What if you get cold or scared?" That evening, Jake tried his first solution. He set up a sleeping bag on the floor, creating his own separate sleeping area. He felt pretty proud of himself as he zipped up the bag and settled in for a peaceful night's sleep. He woke up 3 hours later inside the bed, still in his sleeping bag, with Zara's arms wrapped around the entire bundle. "Much better," she murmured sleepily when she noticed he was awake. "Now you're like a little burrito. So cozy." Jake stared at the ceiling in defeat. How had she even managed to lift him without waking him up? The next night, he tried building a pillow wall down the middle of the bed. Zara examined his construction with interest, nodding approvingly. "A fort," she declared. "How creative. We can tear it down before sleep time." "No, it stays up," Jake said firmly. "This is your side, and that's my side." Zara looked puzzled but agreed. Jake fell asleep feeling victorious. He woke up to find the pillow wall intact, but somehow Zara had managed to stretch her long arms over it. She was sleeping peacefully with one arm draped over him, and the other hand gently patting his head. By the fourth night, Jake was getting desperate. He tried staying up later than Zara, hoping to sneak into bed after she was deeply asleep. But every time he tried to slip under the covers, those golden eyes would open immediately. "There you are," she'd say happily. "I was waiting for you." "How did you know I was trying to get in bed?" "I can sense when you're near," Zara explained, pulling him close. "My people are very good at feeling the emotions of others." "You were Feeling sneaky and determined, it was quite adorable. Jake groaned. She could sense his emotions. This was getting worse by the day. The breaking point came during his 5th night on the station. Jake had been having trouble sleeping his whole life, usually tossing and turning for hours before finally drifting off. But something about Zara's presence made sleep come easily, too easily. He was dreaming about Earth, about his family and friends back home, when suddenly the dream turned dark. He was alone in space, floating in the endless black void with no way to get home. In the dream, he called out for help, but no sound came. Panic filled his chest as he realized he might drift forever in the darkness. Then warm arms surrounded him, and a gentle voice began humming a melody he'd never heard before. The tune was beautiful and soothing, like a lullaby from another world. In his dream, the scary darkness faded away, replaced by soft blue light. Jake woke up to find Zara holding him close, still humming that otherworldly song. Her skin was glowing brighter than usual, casting a comforting light in the dark room. SHH. She whispered when she noticed he was awake. Bad dream is gone now. You're safe. How did you know I was having a nightmare? I felt your fear, Zara said simply. Your heart was beating so fast, and you were making distress sounds. My people have a gift for sensing when others are in pain. Jake wanted to be annoyed, but he couldn't deny that he felt better. The nightmare had seemed so real, but Zara's presence had chased it away completely. Thank you, he said quietly. Zara's face lit up with joy. You see, this is why we sleep together, so I can protect you from the scary things that come at night. Over the next few days, Jake noticed other researchers watching them with amused expressions. Dr. Kevin Park, a physicist from Korea, approached him at lunch with a knowing smile. So, how's life with your alien guardian? Kevin asked. She doesn't think I'm capable of taking care of myself, Jake complained. The Veltari are natural caregivers. Dr. Amy Chen, a linguist, explained as she joined their table. On their homeworld, they take care of smaller species like we might care for pets or children. It's not personal. It feels personal, Jake muttered. That afternoon, Jake was working in the lab when an emergency alarm started blaring. Red lights flashed as the station's computer announced a solar flare warning. All personnel needed to report to emergency shelters immediately. Jake grabbed his equipment and ran toward the nearest shelter. But the corridors were crowded with panicking researchers. In the confusion, he got separated from his group and found himself alone in a side hallway. That's when he felt strong arms scoop him up from behind. Hold tight, little one, Zara's voice said in his ear. Before Jake could protest, Zara was carrying him through the station at incredible speed. Her long legs covered ground much faster than his could have, and she seemed to know exactly where the emergency shelters were located. They reached a small emergency pod just as the blast doors were sealing. The space was tiny, barely big enough for 2 people to sit. Zara carefully placed Jake inside, then squeezed in after him. Are you hurt? She asked, her hands gently checking him for injuries. I'm fine, Jake said, though his heart was still racing from the alarm and the unexpected rescue. The pile was cramped, forcing them to sit pressed close together. Zara's arms naturally wrapped around Jake, holding him securely as the station shook from the solar storm outside. Thank you for getting me to safety, Jake said after a while. Always, Zara replied, and Jake could hear the sincerity in her voice. I will always keep you safe. As they waited for the all-clear signal, Jake found himself thinking about the past few days. Yes, Zara's constant attention was overwhelming and embarrassing, but she'd also chased away his nightmares, made sure he ate properly, and just risked her own safety to get him to shelter. Maybe having someone care about him wasn't the worst thing in the world. When the emergency was over and they returned to their room, Jake didn't bother setting up any barriers. He just climbed into bed and waited. No pillow wall tonight, Zara asked hopefully. No pillow wall, Jake confirmed. Zara's face broke into the brightest smile he'd ever seen. As she settled beside him and gently pulled him close, Jake realized that maybe, just maybe, he was starting to enjoy being someone's favorite person to protect. 3 weeks into their strange living arrangement, Jake had developed what he called the routine. Every morning, he'd wake up in Zara's gentle embrace. Feeling more rested than he ever had in his life, she'd make sure he ate breakfast, walk him to his lab, and somehow always appear whenever he needed help reaching something on a high shelf. At first, other researchers had found their relationship amusing. Now, they treated Jake and Zara like they were a couple. "Good morning, you two," Dr. Amy Chen would say when they entered the cafeteria together. "How are the lovebirds today?" "We're not lovebirds," Jake would protest, his face turning red. "Of course not, sweetness," Zara would agree, then immediately contradict herself by straightening his collar and making sure his hair wasn't messy. "We're much better than birds." The problem was that Jake was starting to look forward to these moments. When Zara wasn't around, he felt oddly incomplete. Her absence made him realize how much he'd grown to depend on her constant, caring presence. Everything changed the day Dr. Elena Vasquez arrived on the station. Dr. Vasquez was a Veltari cultural expert, an older woman with silver-streaked hair and knowing eyes. She'd come to check on the exchange program participants. When she saw Jake and Zara together in the lab, she stopped dead in her tracks. "Oh my," she said quietly, watching as Zara automatically adjusted Jake's lab coat and handed him the tools he needed before he even asked for them. "This is much more serious than anyone realized." After lunch, Dr. Vasquez asked to speak with Jake privately. They sat in her temporary office while she studied him, with the intense focus of a scientist examining a rare specimen. "Tell me about your relationship with Zara," she said gently. "She's my roommate," Jake replied automatically. "She thinks I'm some kind of pet, but I'm getting used to it." Dr. Vasquez shook her head. "I'm afraid it's much more complicated than that. What you're describing isn't normal Veltari behavior toward other species. What Zara's doing with you is called comfort bonding. Comfort bonding among the Veltari. It's the first stage of finding a life partner," Dr. Vasquez explained. "When a Veltari finds someone they want to protect and care for completely, they begin this bonding process. It usually leads to permanent attachment." Jake felt his heart skip a beat. "But she doesn't know what she's doing, right? I mean, she's just being friendly." "I don't think so," Dr. Vasquez said carefully. "Zara's young for her species, but she's not a child. Her protective instincts toward you are very strong." "Has she shown any possessive behavior?" Jake thought about it. Just yesterday, when Dr. Kevin Park had sat a little too close to Jake during a meeting, Zara had smoothly moved between them. She'd been polite about it, but definite. And last week, when a new researcher had asked Jake to help with a project, Zara had insisted on coming along to make sure he didn't overwork himself. "Maybe a little," Jake admitted. "And how do you feel about her?" Dr. Vasquez asked. That was the question Jake had been avoiding. How did he feel about Zara? She was kind, gentle, and genuinely cared about his well-being. She made him feel safe and protected in a way he'd never experienced before. When she smiled at him, his whole day felt brighter. But she was also an alien, a 7-foot-tall, blue-skinned alien who treated him like a beloved pet. This couldn't be normal, could it? "I don't know," Jake said honestly. That evening, Jake tried to create some distance. When Zara moved to sit beside him at dinner, he chose a different table. When she offered to walk him back to their room, he said he needed to work late in the lab. But when he finally returned to their quarters at midnight, exhausted and stressed from trying to avoid her all day, Zara was waiting up for him. She was sitting on their bed, her golden eyes filled with worry. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked quietly. "You've been avoiding me all day." The hurt in her voice made Jake's chest ache. "No, you didn't do anything wrong. It's just..." He struggled to find the right words. "Dr. Vasquez told me about comfort bonding. She said you might be getting too attached to me." Zara's skin dimmed noticeably, the soft glow fading until she looked almost gray. "I see. You don't want me to care about you." "That's not what I meant," Jake said quickly. "It's just complicated. We're from different species. People are starting to talk. And that embarrasses you," Zara said, her voice very small. Jake wanted to deny it, but he couldn't. It did embarrass him sometimes. being treated like someone's precious possession in front of his colleagues. But seeing Zara's reaction now, the way her light had dimmed and her shoulders had drooped, made him realize how cruel his avoidance had been. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. My feelings don't matter." Zara replied, but her tone suggested they mattered. "Very much. If my presence makes you uncomfortable, I can request a transfer to different quarters." The thought of Zara leaving, of waking up alone and cold, sent a wave of panic through Jake. "No," he said quickly, surprising himself. "Don't do that." "But you said—" "I know what I said, but I don't want you to leave." Jake sat down beside her on the bed, close enough that their knees touched. "I just don't understand what's happening between us. 3 weeks ago, I didn't even know your species existed. Now I can't imagine sleeping without you there." Zara's glow began to return slowly. "You can't know," Jake admitted. "You chase away my nightmares and make me feel safe when you're not around. I keep looking for you. I think Dr. Vasquez was right about the bonding thing, but I think it's happening to both of us. So what do we do?" Zara asked. Jake thought about it. He could keep fighting what was happening between them, keep trying to maintain professional distance, or he could accept that sometimes the most unexpected things turn out to be exactly what you need. "Maybe we stop worrying about what other people think," Jake said. "Maybe we figure out what we want, not what we're supposed to want." Zara's face lit up with hope. "And what do you want?" Jake looked at her, really looked at her kind golden eyes, her gentle smile, the way she glowed softly in the dim light of their room. She was beautiful and caring and completely devoted to his happiness. How could he not want that? "I want you to stay," he said simply. "I want to wake up in your arms every morning and fall asleep feeling safe every night. I want to stop being embarrassed about how much I care about you, even though I'm not human." "Especially because you're not human," Jake said with a smile. "A human girl would never put up with how messy I am or how much I worry about everything. But you think all my weird habits are adorable." Zara laughed, the sound like silver bells. "They're adorable. You're the most precious being in the entire galaxy." As she pulled him into her arms for their nightly cuddle, Jake realized that Dr. Vasquez had been right about one thing. This was definitely more serious than anyone had realized. But maybe that wasn't such a bad thing after all. For the first time since arriving on the station, Jake fell asleep without worrying about what tomorrow would bring. Whatever happened, he knew Zara would be there to face it with him. Life on the station became much easier once Jake stopped fighting his feelings for Zara. For 2 weeks, they fell into a comfortable rhythm. Jake would wake up safe in her arms. They'd eat breakfast together, work in their respective labs, and spend evenings talking about everything from Earth customs to Viltari traditions. But their peaceful routine was about to face its biggest test yet. Dr. Richard Stone arrived on the station like a storm cloud. He was the type of scientist who believed emotions had no place in research, and he made his disapproval of Jake and Zara's relationship very clear from the moment he stepped off the transport shuttle. "This is highly unprofessional," Dr. Stone announced during his first staff meeting. "We're here to conduct serious scientific research, not to play house with alien species. It reflects poorly on the entire human contingent." Jake felt his face burn with embarrassment, but before he could respond, Zara's hand found his under the table. Her touch was gentle but firm, silently telling him she was there for him. "With respect, Dr. Stone," Dr. Amy Chen spoke up, "Jake and Zara's partnership has actually enhanced both of their research projects. Their collaboration has produced some fascinating results." Dr. Stone's cold eyes fixed on Jake. "Is that what we're calling it now? Collaboration?" After the meeting, Jake felt terrible. Maybe Dr. Stone was right. Maybe their relationship was unprofessional and embarrassing. Maybe he was just a foolish young man who'd gotten too attached to the first being who'd shown him kindness in space. That night, Jake lay stiffly in Zara's arms, his mind racing with doubts. Zara sensed his distress immediately, her empathic abilities picking up on his troubled emotions. "You're thinking very loudly," she murmured in the darkness. "What's wrong, my precious one?" "Dr. Stone thinks our relationship is inappropriate," Jake said quietly. maybe he's right. Maybe I'm just being unprofessional. Zara was quiet for a long moment when she spoke. Her voice was sadder than Jake had ever heard it. Do you want me to request a transfer? She asked. I could move to different quarters. We could pretend to be just colleagues. The thought of losing Zara, of going back to sleeping alone and facing each day without her gentle care, made Jake's chest ache. No, he said firmly, I don't want that at all. Then why are you letting him make you doubt what we have? It was a good question. Why was he letting one bitter man's opinion matter more than his own happiness? Jake turned in Zara's arms so he could see her face in the soft glow of her skin. Because I'm scared, he admitted. I've never felt this way about anyone before. What if I mess it up? What if I'm not good enough for you? Zara's expression grew tender. Oh, my sweet human. You think you're not good enough for me. I'm the one who's lucky. You could have anyone you wanted. Yet you choose to stay with me. Choose you? Zara, you're the most amazing being I've ever met. You're kind and gentle and incredibly smart. You make me feel like I matter. You do matter, Zara said fiercely. You matter more than anything. The next day, Dr. Stone made his move. He filed an official complaint with the station administration, claiming that Jake and Zara's relationship was compromising the research mission. He demanded that one of them be transferred to a different station. Jake found out about the complaint when Dr. Lisa Wong called him to her office. She looked uncomfortable as she explained the situation. I don't agree with Dr. Stone, she said carefully, but he's raised some valid concerns about maintaining professional boundaries. The administration is considering his request for a transfer. Jake felt panic rise in his chest. You can't separate us. Zara hasn't done anything wrong. She's one of the best researchers on the station. I know that. And you know that, Dr. Wong said. But Dr. Stone has influence with the people who fund this program. I'm trying to find a solution that works for everyone. That evening, Jake was so upset he couldn't eat dinner. Zara noticed immediately and grew increasingly worried as she watched him push food around his plate. Talk to me, she pleaded. What happened today? Jake told her about Dr. Stone's complaint and the possibility of transfer. As he spoke, Zara's glow began to dim, just like it had that night weeks ago when he tried to create distance between them. I see, she said quietly when he finished. So he wants me gone. It's not about you specifically, Jake said quickly. He just thinks our relationship is inappropriate. Maybe it is, Zara said, her voice very small. Maybe I've been selfish, keeping you to myself when you could be focusing on your career. Don't say that, Jake said firmly. You're not keeping me from anything. You're the best thing that's happened to me since I came to this station. But he could see that Zara didn't believe him. The confident, glowing being who had swept him into her arms that first night was fading before his eyes, replaced by someone who looked lost and uncertain. That night, for the first time since their relationship had begun, Zara didn't immediately pull Jake into her usual protective embrace. She lay on her side of the bed, her back to him, trying to give him space. Jake couldn't stand it. He moved across the bed and wrapped his arms around her from behind, holding her close. Don't pull away from me, he whispered. Please don't let him win. I don't want to ruin your future, Zara replied, but she didn't push him away. You are my future, Jake said, surprised by the certainty in his own voice. I don't care what Dr. Stone thinks. I don't care what anyone thinks. You make me happy, and that's all that matters. The next morning brought unexpected news. Dr. Kevin Park burst into the cafeteria where Jake and Zara were eating breakfast. His face flushed with excitement. You need to see this, he said, pulling up a news article on his tablet. The research paper you co-authored last week just got accepted by the Journal of Interspecies Biology. They're calling it groundbreaking work. Jake and Zara looked at each other in amazement. They had been working together on a project about how different species could collaborate in space environments, using their own relationship as a case study. It had started as a small side project, but apparently it was more significant than they'd realized. There's more, Dr. Park continued. The journal wants to feature you two on their next cover. They're calling your partnership a perfect example of successful interspecies collaboration. Word of their published research spread quickly through the station. Suddenly, instead of being seen as unprofessional, Jake and Zara's relationship was being praised as an example of the kind of cooperation the exchange program was meant to foster. Even Dr. Stone seemed to back down in the face of their academic success. He couldn't very well argue that their relationship was compromising their work, when they just produced some of the most important research to come out of the station. That evening, Jake and Zara sat together in their room, looking at the digital copy of their published paper. Seeing their names together on the screen made everything feel more real, more permanent. "We did good work together," Zara said softly. "We do everything good together." Jake replied, pulling her close. "That's what partnerships are supposed to be like. Is that what we are?" Zara asked. "Partners?" Jake thought about it. They were research partners, roommates, best friends, and something much deeper that he was still learning to understand. Whatever they were, he knew he never wanted it to end. "We're whatever we want to be," he said, "and I want to be yours." Zara's face lit up with joy, her skin glowing brighter than he'd ever seen it. "Always, always," Jake promised, and for the first time since Dr. Stone's arrival, he felt completely sure of their future together. 4.5 months into the exchange program, Jake had almost forgotten what life was like before Zara. He couldn't imagine waking up without her gentle embrace, or falling asleep without her soft humming. Their published research had opened doors he'd never dreamed of, and other scientists were starting to take notice of their unique partnership. Then Dr. Wong delivered news that changed everything. The Viltari Council has been so impressed with the exchange program that they're inviting a small team of human researchers to visit their home world, she announced during the weekly staff meeting. "It's a huge honor. The mission would last 2 years." Jake felt his heart skip a beat. 2 years on an alien world, studying things no human had ever seen before. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. "The team will be small," Dr. Wong continued. "Just 3 researchers and their Veltari guides. Zara has already been selected to represent her people." After the meeting, Jake found Zara waiting for him in the hallway. Her golden eyes were bright with excitement, but there was something uncertain in her expression. "Did you hear about the mission?" she asked. "Yeah, it sounds incredible. You must be so excited to go home." Zara's glow dimmed slightly. "It would be wonderful to see my family again, but I don't want to leave you behind." The words hit Jake like a punch to the stomach. He'd been so focused on his own excitement about the mission that he hadn't considered the most important part. Would they be separated? "Maybe I could apply to be one of the human researchers," Jake said hopefully. But when the application requirements were announced, Jake's heart sank. The mission needed specialists in advanced physics, diplomatic relations, and interstellar engineering. Jake's biology background, while valuable, wasn't what they were looking for. Over the next few days, Jake watched as other researchers submitted their applications. Dr. Kevin Park applied with his physics expertise. Dr. Amy Chen put in for the diplomatic position. Even Dr. Stone, despite his earlier complaints about interspecies relationships, applied for the engineering role. Jake felt left out and forgotten. Worse, he could see that Zara was torn between her excitement about going home and her reluctance to leave him behind. "Maybe you should go without me," Jake said one night as they lay in bed together. "This is your chance to see your family again. I don't want to hold you back." Zara's arms tightened around him. "I'm not going anywhere without you, but it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So are you?" Zara replied firmly. "Besides, my people would love to meet you. They've never seen a human before." Jake tried to imagine himself on an alien world, surrounded by beings like Zara. The thought was both terrifying and exciting. The selection results were announced a week later. Dr. Amy Chen got the diplomatic position, which surprised no one. But the other 2 selections were unexpected. Dr. Kevin Park was chosen for physics, but the engineering position went to a researcher from the station's sister facility, not Dr. Stone. That left one position unfilled. "We need someone with biological expertise," Dr. Wong explained during an emergency meeting. "The Viltari want to establish botanical exchanges, And we need someone who understands how different plant species might adapt to new environments. Jake's heart started racing. Botanical adaptation was exactly his area of expertise. Jake, Dr. Wong said, turning to him with a smile, how would you feel about 2 years on an alien world? Jake looked at Zara, who was practically glowing with excitement. I feel like the luckiest human in the galaxy. The next month passed in a blur of preparations. Jake had to learn basic Veltari customs, pack equipment for a 2-year mission, and say goodbye to everyone on the station. His family, back on Earth, were amazed when he called to tell them about the mission, an alien world. His mother said, her voice crackling through the long-distance communication. Are you sure it's safe? I'll be fine, Mom. Zara will take care of me. His parents had been confused at first when Jake told them about Zara. The idea of their son in a relationship with an alien being took some getting used to. But when they saw how happy Jake looked during their video calls, they gradually came around. She makes you smile more than I've seen in years, his father admitted. That's what matters. The night before their departure, Jake and Zara packed their belongings together. Most of Jake's clothes and personal items fit into small bags. Zara's collection of stuffed animals and comfort objects took up considerably more space. Do you really need all of these? Jake asked, looking at the mountain of fuzzy creatures. They're not for me, Zara said with a mischievous smile. They're for you. My family is going to want to spoil you properly. Your family wants to spoil me. Of course, you're going to be their first human guest. They'll probably compete to see who can take the best care of you. Jake wasn't sure how he felt about being treated like a beloved pet by an entire alien family. But if they were anything like Zara, he figured he'd survive. The transport ship that would take them to the Veltari homeworld was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. It was massive and elegant, with flowing curves that reminded him of Zara's graceful movements. The interior was designed for comfort, with soft lighting and walls that seemed to pulse gently like a heartbeat as they settled into their quarters for the journey. Jake realized this would be their first real test as a couple. 2 weeks alone together in a small space, traveling to an unknown world where Jake would be completely dependent on Zara for everything from communication to basic survival. Are you nervous? Zara asked as they prepared for their first night. Aboard the ship, terrified, Jake admitted, what if your family doesn't like me? What if I can't adapt to your world? Zara pulled him into her familiar embrace, and Jake felt his anxiety begin to fade. No matter where they were or what challenges they faced, this feeling of safety and love remained constant. My family will adore you, Zara said, confidently. And as for adapting, you're the most adaptable human I know. Look how well you've adjusted to being cuddled every night, Jake laughed. I didn't have much choice in that. You had a choice, Zara said seriously. You could have kept fighting it. You could have requested a transfer. But you chose to let me care for you. That takes courage. As the ship began its journey through space, Jake thought about everything that had led to this moment. 6 months ago, he'd been a lonely graduate student who couldn't sleep well and worried about everything. Now he was traveling to an alien world with someone who loved him completely, about to embark on the adventure of a lifetime. Thank you, he said softly. For what? For thinking I was worth keeping. Jake replied, for treating me like I was precious even when I didn't feel that way about myself. You are precious, Zara said, pressing a gentle kiss to the top of his head. You're the most precious thing in any world. As Jake drifted off to sleep in Zara's arms, surrounded by the gentle hum of the ship's engines and the soft pulse of alien technology, he realized he'd found something he'd never even known he was looking for. He found home in the most unexpected place possible, in the arms of someone who thought he was perfect just the way he was. The journey to Zara's world would take 2 weeks, but Jake was no longer worried about what they'd find when they arrived. Whatever challenges awaited them, they'd face them together. And if Zara's family was anything like her, Jake suspected he was about to become the most spoiled human in the galaxy. He couldn't think of anywhere else he'd rather be.